Hi, everybody. Hi, everybody. Hi, everybody, and welcome back to the Talking About the Big Stuff podcast with Michael Cole and Matthew Cravat. I am Michael Cole.
And I am Matthew Cravat.
It's 6:30. Welcome back to Talking About the Big Stuff. This week, I won't even say we have a guest because it's our own producer that we're going to interrogate today.
Sorry.
Did you mean interview? Did you mean interview? No, you meant interrogate.
We're going to have a conversation. A week and a half or so ago, Alex
but for the purposes of our Creator Accountability Network credentialing, he's a guest today.
Yeah.
Okay. Good cover.
So Alex and I had a conversation a few weeks ago. I don't even remember how it started. We were probably talking about cinema stuff because we have our own movie podcast. As long as I don't piss them off too much tonight, we will still continue to have our own
we'll record tomorrow
podcast. But we were talking about something, and we started getting onto the topic of some of the diversity moves of the last 10 years or so, and
which are now illegal.
A couple of things. Sorry, what?
Which are now illegal. The North Carolina Republicans just overturned the governor's veto for their bill banning DEI in North Carolina. I guess I don't know if it's all just state, whatever. But there was a bill trying to get, put a stake in the heart of DEI, and the governor vetoed it, and the Republicans overran his veto this week.
Okay.
DEI,
Thursday morning. Diversity,
women,
equity, and inclusion.
Women.
Alex is going to lean into the bad guy. Okay, cool.
Oh my! He said women. That's a huge coming so far for him.
Yeah. You're talking about chicks,
broad chicks, and females. He's good. He said women.
Audience. Okay, audience. The chicks thing. All right. So let me
finish wrapping. Let me finish wrapping up the intro, and then we will get on to your.
Then you can start trying to dig your way out of it.
You can talk about your
and I don't mean baby chickens.
Chicks.
So Alex and I were having this conversation, and we realized that we kind of have opposite opinions on specifically the Little Mermaid remake and and turning Splash Mountain into Tiana's Bayou. But it also kind of created a bigger conversation that we thought would be good to have here on Talking About the Big Stuff, where Alex can either convince us of his intense opinion, or we can convince him of our correct opinion. We will see what happens.
I'm going to say I have opinions about Splash Mountain that half of them may align with Alex. I'm just saying.
Okay, fair. And I will say that the way that
I don't know
what
his
Alex
opinion,
explained
but I
to
think
me,
half of them might.
What Alex explained to me, and we will get into it, is not as ridiculous. He's not nearly as intense. His reasoning made a lot of sense. I just disagree with the conclusion. So we will say that.
So before we let
Alex,
looks
so tired already. He looks like, this is going to be the worst episode
ever. So before we let Alex defend himself, I want to say how funny it is that this is happening now on our little podcast, because right now in the podcast universe, there's been a huge uproar, and you guys probably are not aware because I don't think that either you listen to the Skeptic's Guide to the Universe podcast, but it is the oldest skepticism podcast. It's one of the oldest podcasts. It's like Mark Maron kind of age podcast. It's been around forever. And it started these three brothers, Dr. Stephen Novello, who's a neurologist, and his two brothers, who are just very into science. Their best friend,
Dr. Stephen Novello kill somebody. Isn't that what Eli always says?
He does say that a lot. Yeah. When they were at a convention together, he kept saying it because they were both doing live podcasts at the same time. And he was saying, don't go to theirs. He killed a guy. Go to our podcast. So it became a running gag. Actually, he was a neurosurgeon and professor of neuroscience at Yale. He just retired this last summer. He's been this is what come up 1 year of his retirement. But his career was teaching and being head of neurology, maybe, or I don't know if he's head, but doing neurology at Yale. But smart guy. His brothers were very into science. The other two best friends, Perry and Evan, they formed the New England Skeptic Society, and then this podcast came out of it. And then Perry left the podcast and died, and then left the podcast. I'm not sure the order is before my time. And Rebecca Watson joined the podcast. and she's the Skep chick. You would like her, Alex. Her name's the Skep chick. And then after a while, she left the podcast, started doing bigger and better things, on her own. She's great. She has a wonderful YouTube channel. And Cara Santa Maria, who is now Dr. Cara Santa Maria, she is a psychologist now, joined the show. And so they've been on the show. Their politics used to be, it's not about politics unless politics gets into science. So recently it's been a lot about politics. And they're all kind of, well, Sarah is like far left. Like she's like in my realm, I'd say. The boys were, I don't know what they were. They were near the center. I don't know which side of the center, but now they've moved further and further left because the parties have moved. Except apparently Evan was still like very conservative, and like whenever they got politics, he would stop talking. He was anti-Trump and he was anti-Kennedy because of what they were doing for science, but he just didn't talk about politics with his three best friends and Cara at all. And it just came out that on X, he's been saying, bomb Iran back into the Stone Age, destroy the Gaza so we can move in there and make it pretty. And he's of Jewish descent like I am. So it's interesting.
No.
But he kind of got ultra radicalized after October 7th, which I understand the impulse to want to, but the skepticism and critical thinking is supposed to tamp that impulse down and overcome it. And so he has just left the podcast. I mean, they put him on suspension and they were going to work through it, but he
put him on suspension.
They said it'd be easier to quit the podcast rather than have it over his head that if you don't change your opinion, you can't come back. Now they can try to work to help him use some skepticism and hopefully change his dehumanizing opinions and make atones, maybe, without that being a threat or a reward. So he's left the show. But it's funny that he left the show for his dehumanization, and now we're talking about Alex's.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm just turning the camera off for a second because I have like a cut in my mouth. I'm using Oragel, and I figure nobody wants to see that.
Like my
nobody wants
timing.
To see you finger your own face.
That's my perfect timing, making you sound like a monster comparing you to Evan, and he turns off his camera like doing that.
All right. So, audience, let me open.
So let's just start with, I love that Ricochet Reed in the chat is asking Alex to mansplain DEI to her.
Mm-hmm.
And my response is conservative women voting against DEI is wild work, because it is.
Yeah. Correct.
So I grew up in a household that was wildly contradictory of its stances on public policies and its a position on religion and politics and government. Obviously, a white household. I've always lived in mixed ethnic communities, but I was always around just a butt ton of white people because, again, crazy racist dad. We've talked about him before. Now, my likely closeted gay father, hating on gay people and black people as much as he did, informed a lot of my young opinions, but they weren't opinions because I could not justify how I felt very often when my dad would say, "Oh, because you were this is what happens." I thought, well, really? My black friends or my friends that are females, none of them act like that. What are you talking about? And my mom, quiet pacifist, basically a Quaker, would never really challenge his stances, at least not in front of us, because it was obvious she wasn't going to win him over or change his mind. And as I got much older and became an adult and will continue to punish myself for voting for the for Cheeto Tweedolini in 2016, I definitely have some like leftover biases are not even the way to say it.
No,
just
I know what you're saying.
Issues with the way that other but heterosexual, white, or for that matter, men are portrayed, handled, defended, given award, and then punishment to everyone else. Like all of these scenarios, I've never been okay with any of it because I've learned as I've gotten older that equality is a joke and equity is the only way that this is going to ever bring more balance to folks and of any age, the way we all interact with each other. And Mike and I were on the phone, and I was talking about how, although I might be a fan of the House of Mouse, I certainly don't like some of their practices. So one of the examples I gave Mike is, well, I mean, they sell Pride merchandise.
This is a great example. This is actually one, because I know that we're going to jokingly vilify Alex, but I don't think that I don't think it's necessary to do that. I just think it's funny.
It is entertaining,
but like this is a point where Alex shows who his perspective in a way that I think will illustrate how I don't think he's as bad as we're going to portray him. You know, like go ahead,
Couldn't
explain
possibly be as bad as we're going to portray him.
No, well, likely not. So Disney is a company that has, right? The House of Mouse is not only, they're not the most litigious media company, but they're close.
If they're not, I don't know who is. They may not be, but they may
fair,
be.
Fair. Well,
they're way up there. I agree 100%.
They are. When I think of entertainment company, I also put in like media, games, and other like production methods in there. And Nintendo is the most litigious company of all of them. Disney for general media right behind them. Now, Disney has no active representation in their brand of anything, even in live action or in animation. It's a little better now for those of you who have seen Toy Story 5, but they sell merchandise that is Pride themed. They have LGBTQ Pride coalitions within their company. But that buck stops with the folks that you see in the park. So in the world of Disney, anybody who is under the umbrella of Disney is called a cast member. And that is hearkening back to them wanting to make an environment that doesn't just feel like you work there, right?
I interviewed for a job at the Disney store when the first one opened up here in the Triangle forever ago. And I will concur. Employees of the Disney store are cast members. Mm-hmm. Being on the floor of the store is being on stage.
Yep.
Your clothes is called your costume. So yeah, 100%. Like even in the retail stores, they carry through the terminology of the studio.
Now, the people who work at Disney Studios in an office, for example, they are able to show any connection or support, whether as an ally or a member, to the LGBTQ community. As soon as you are a cast member, meaning you are public facing, you are not allowed to wear, display, have, or show any of the merchandise your own employer manufactures out of fear that it's going to show solidarity?
Is that
out of fear that it's going to cause a conversation?
Are they not allowed to wear anything that's not the approved uniform they're supposed to wear? Or you're saying even in situations where they can wear, even in situations where they have freedom, that's one specific freedom they don't have.
Well, they're allowed to wear pins. They're allowed to wear pretty much any of the Disney pins. So if they're not allowed to wear
except for the Pride ones,
then
that's big. Then
yes.
So yes, there are specific costumes that certain ride attendants or staff wear where there is no way that they could display something like that because it's not too uniform. That's not my issue. My issue is like I carry a sling bag, European men's carry-all, and I have pins all over.
Indiana Jones had a satchel.
He did, and I have no problem with the pins that are on there. But if that was my personal item that I had in the park and I had a Pride pin and I was a Disney employee, I am out of uniform because I am displaying an affinity for any kind of community. But what's weird is Disney won't stop you from having a pin that's one of their IPs, like Mickey, like Oswald, which is one of my favorite characters. Like you could even, I bet you, and where this will put us right into Tiana's, I bet you could have Song of the South pins. And you'd be allowed to have those on your stuff, but not a Pride pin. And the same company makes both. The people freaking
do they even make a Song of the South pin? I would imagine they don't make a Song of the South pin.
I would imagine they don't.
If you make your own and show up to work, you should be on
God.
not only a Disney list, but a couple others. You should be
See,
in
that's
the
where I would differ.
Southern
Because
Poverty
as
Law
an English
Center.
major, I don't know, Mike, if you ever read Thurber's
Tom's
original
Cabin.
like Uncle Remus stories, but they are not anti-black. They are ironically and sarcastically, the black characters get one over on the white, characters in allegory, at least. It's about how the slaves and how the recently made slaves would get one over on people. It was about how they smile all the time in front of them, but it didn't mean they weren't smarter than them. Like they were, it's about manipulating them, getting their own way.
Sure.
Like not having that that property out there anymore in Disney is really saying people aren't going to understand the nuance of this. We're going to look bad. There's much better examples like the Dumbo, the crows.
The crows and Dumbo,
one of them is named Jim Crow.
And one of them is literally
a much better example of racism in Disney than Zippity Doodah.
It is, but Zippity Doodah or Song of the South. Zippity Doodah is the song. Song of the South is the animated short.
I have one video called the Zippity Doodah video. It's like sing along with Disney, and
it's what
I have a sing along with Disney video when the kids were young. Like there were like a series of like 10 of them, whatever, and each one was named after a song, and then it was like videos and 10 videos in it, whatever. And the one I had was called Zippity Doodah, and it had, of course, Zippity Doodah, and then it had other random songs from different shows.
Mm-hmm. So
that's always fresh in my head.
My issue is not that Disney makes it. It was that this became such an issue that around, I think it was 2022. I'm not going to look it up because I'll get yelled at from my keyboard. There were entire sections of Disney staffing. So these are people in the office that are not public facing, who are allowed to have Pride merchandise that their own employer sells on their desks, on their person. They're allowed to engage in Pride events that are in the office. But my issue I took is as soon as it's the public that could see these people doing it, oh, no, you might ruffle feathers. Fuck ruffling feathers. We kind of need to do that.
Yeah,
I absolutely agree with you, because if it's okay to be on a shelf in front of everybody there, then it's okay to be on the person. We're not talking about like Adam and Eve products here. We're
talking about a pin with the rainbow ears. That's it.
So I'm curious, did this coincide with, because they used to be very, very pro-Pride and pro-LGBT.
They were one of the first companies in America to have health benefits for same-sex.
They were
significant others. That was 30 years ago.
They're weirdly exclusionary as soon as it's the public eye.
Well,
they want to appear good, and it's not that they're bad.
So I don't like Disney these days anyway, so I'm not defending them in any way, shape, or form. Do not misinterpret anything. But the reason when I stopped liking them was when they started sucking DeSantis's dick. Because originally they were fighting DeSantis at every turn, and they were spiting him, and they were not listening to him, and they were doing Pride weekends in spite of what Florida was saying. Yes. And then at some point they turned around and started sucking his dick. And I'm wondering if these rules were part of that, or were this the way it always was? Because my guess would be this, like when I stopped disliking them was when they started saying, okay, let's not piss off Florida anymore. Yeah. And I can imagine that's when this started, and which does not forgive it in any way, shape, or form. It's when we stopped going. But I wonder if that's all part of it, that they just it's not, it could be. What's their heartfelt thing? Their heartfelt thing is profit. And
true.
And who knows if they really care about Pride and they're giving in, or if they never cared about Pride and they were always making money. I don't know which it is.
So the way that this moves into the pandering side is here. My handicap relies on three major like pillars to make myself function. One of them is structure. Another one is spontaneity, which is the complete opposite of structure. And the third is, as Mike says, sleeping till noon. Now, in the case of structure, I like it's not structure, it's consistency, audience. So I need to commit something to memory that I can always rely on, because I love so much lack of structure that I want that like general consistency there so I can anchor in something, whether it's emotionally or physically, right? Now, we were talking when Mike and I were on the phone about the change of the race of the character of The Little Mermaid. And I said, Mike, I have no issue with that the new actress isn't white. It's that the original one isn't. It has nothing to do with the actual race change, although now I sound like a racist dick. Let's just open the door, why don't we? Anyone got a hose? Turn it on?
Yeah.
Anybody? Yeah?
But
Okay.
when you say original one, what original one do you mean?
I mean the animated, ginger, white as hell mermaid.
Okay, the one that was
is
not accurate to the
one
actual story.
The one that is correct, I know, not accurate to the original story. I am making the statement that when you think of Little Mermaid, if you ask someone without aphantasia to describe the Little Mermaid to you, it's the green
Shots
bottom.
fired.
We are all mostly aware of what the general image of the Little Mermaid is. And Mike said, well, yeah, but the new girl can sing well. I said, cool, I know. And the new girl is already part of Disney's talent pool. I said, yeah, and he said, so your problem isn't that she's black? I said, no, it's that she doesn't look like that. And he said, nothing can look like that. And I said, yeah, okay, it is kind of weird, but the only character in all of this lore or universe that has any kind of Caribbean accent is the crustacean. It's not even a human. The only thing that has the appropriate accent for where this takes place is a crab.
That's incredibly not appropriate because, Hans Christian Andersen didn't write about the Caribbean.
Oh,
okay, true.
Like nothing in Little Mermaid is faithful other than not even the name.
Little
Mermaid,
name, maybe.
Ariel was the word Ariel. The name Ariel is not mentioned in the Little Mermaid. Hans Christian Andersen. It's just the mermaid. Like her name. She doesn't have a name. They made up every element of her. King Triton is not in the original version. She has a grandmother and sisters, and they're very important parts of the lore where they're not, they're just kind of mentioned a thing. Ursula is not an evil witch, in the original. She makes a fair deal. It says, here's the deal. She doesn't go and try to cheat her in the deal. there's so little that went from version 1 to version 2.
Disney, fairy tales.
Okay. That is how it's with. And it's interesting.
Who cares what they do going from version 2 to version 3? Why can't they take just as many liberties as they did from version 1 to version 2?
Okay.
Okay. Here's another question for you, and I'm just curious. I know you're not a Marvel person. In the Thor movies, the Norse gods there's some Asian Norse gods and there's some black Norse gods. Does that bother you?
No.
Okay. But they're in
the
Norse
comics.
gods.
They weren't, and in Norse mythology, they're Norsemen. In the comics, they were drawn to look like Norsemen. Except, of course, Thor in mythology is a burly, fat redhead.
True.
And Thor in the comic and movie was blonde.
Yeah. So okay, no, it doesn't. But therein lies some of the rocky stance that this is. And we're speaking of an animated, not only a fantasy world, but an animated fantasy world where I can make this look, sound, and feel like anything I please. So animated works tend to be products of their time in a way. And I have no issue that the right person for the role was chosen. Mike said yes, and I remember, Mike, you even said, well, do you think that she was just the best? I said, unfortunately, my slightly conservative coded brain doesn't think in any way that there was a trial. We just picked the girl who sang well, and she happens to be black. I do not think that there is no chance that Disney didn't choose someone who isn't white on purpose. I think it's just a convenient happenstance that she's an excellent singer, can deliver lines, can act well, and happens to not be white.
Okay,
I think is a little bit of a it's a hot take, but I'm not saying I'm going to take it away from them, and here's why I won't. Princess and the Frog. Let's move on to Tiana's Bayou Adventure.
Hold on. What you just said, I want to flip on its ear for a second. For vice president
Yes.
in 2020, did you think that Kamala Harris was a good VP pick for President Biden to pick?
No, I have no opinion. I was so disconnected from like actual politics back then.
Do you know why I'm asking that, Matthew?
No.
Because he had said, I'm going to look for a black woman to be my vice president.
Which
Because
I have
he
no
wants
problem
more
with him picking a black woman.
Recognition, representation.
Oh, okay.
I have no problem with him picking a black woman, but by calling it out ahead of time, it was almost like, and it was not on purpose, it was the dog whistle to conservatives.
Which was ridiculous because Trump said, I'm going to get a black woman on the Supreme Court, or a woman on the Supreme Court. And when he put Amy Coney Barrett,
but
like he had done the same thing without the color.
It would have just been better if Biden had not said it. Like if he had not said it, it would have been perfect, right? Like, and that's my point is sometimes like you have the thing in your mind already, and then you say like, don't worry, I'm going to pick a black woman. And it's like, okay, fine. Okay, in this case, with Halle Bailey, she was really qualified to play the role in every way except that she didn't look like the 1989 cartoon. She was a really great singer. I think she was really good in the movie as both singing and, I mean, when we went and saw the movie, because, you know, we went in knowing there was controversy about her casting, we saw it in theaters, we were all like, the movie is a little lackluster in a lot of ways, but she is the least of the problems with the movie. You know, like she is. Yeah, and remember, she's an A, and the rest of the movie's like a C plus.
And there's a thing about animation. I went back in the days of America Online, when that was our doorway to the internet. DC and Marvel Comics each had a section with live chat rooms, and so a lot of the writers and artists would be in the chat rooms and on the message board. So you got to have parasocial relationships with them. And I remember somebody asked John Byrne, famous for rebooting Superman to basically what he's seen as today. That's his interpretation of Superman. Famous for Uncanny X-Men, Wolverine, the center of the universe. You know, he and Chris Claremont together, their run kind of set what X-Men became. Someone asked John, "Hey, how come you do so many redheads? Every woman you draw is a redhead. What's up with that?" And he's like, "Well, they're cute." He goes, "But more importantly, it looks good on a comic book page." Blonde hair and black hair don't look as good as red hair on the page. It's just, it jumps out at you. And so you have a redhead in the cartoon in underwater with hair flowing everywhere. Red hair just looked good. You know, it's not the original Little Mermaid just had skin as translucent as a rose petal or something. It didn't say the color of her skin, just said it was like as clear as a rose petal, whatever the hell that means. Rose petals are red. And that's all it really said about her appearance. And she had a fishtail. Like, it didn't talk about any her hair color or her skin color, you know, whatever, or just somehow clear as a rose petal, whatever the fuck that means. Yeah. Or maybe that just translates badly, into English. Maybe so, the expression.
True. So when we're talking about an animated scenario, let's talk about Princess and the Frog. Now, Princess and the Frog, as a movie, was not that commercially successful for Disney. It is a good movie. It is one of my favorite post-2000 era animated Disney films. And there is, or was, Splash Mountain, which was the last, I guess, what's the best way to say it? Problematic holdover in all of Disney park IP. Because
it was also the weirdest thing to exist because no kid going on that ride knew any of the characters that were on that ride. It was just, even if it wasn't problematic, it was just, what is this ride?
They've never released it on any format after like VHS, DVD, anything because of how big it, like
so Matthew, when you were talking about earlier, they should have stood by it and released it in context of what it is, personally. Yeah. But I have no problem with getting rid of the ride because I used to have to explain to the kids, this was a really cool thing based on really cool American literature, but none of these things mean anything to you.
I will say, Matthew, as somebody who has not seen it, although I did have the opportunity once and nobody wanted to watch it, and I was like, come on, this is like a thing that we're never going to get the chance for. Someone had a bootleg copy and nobody wanted to watch it. I was like, not aware of. I haven't seen it, so I can't really judge it other than what I've been told about it, right? So
and I don't remember the movie as well as I remember
Okay.
the actual stories because I studied them in school. Like
Okay.
they were
Yeah.
part of my curriculum.
But having said that, Sarah and I were at Disney one of the first few years. It may have been the time we got engaged. I don't remember. We were in line for Splash Mountain, and there are wanted posters of the crows and of different characters, and I was like, oh, because when I had been a little kid and gone on, when I was in second or third grade or whatever, when we went to Disney World, I didn't notice any of that shit. But as a 26 or 7-year-old guy, whatever I was like, oh shit, this is really fucking uncomfortable, especially with like a black family immediately behind me, seeing racist propaganda pictures, essentially.
Yeah.
And so, without the context of knowing
the issue, it's supposed to be, calling attention to the original story,
and that's fine. But without context, it ruins.
Well, that's why I don't understand the ride existing because nobody knows the stories anymore.
So that's all I want to get to.
Yeah. Now, in modern times, the retheme was what, in 2023, 22?
It's been a couple years, yeah.
So it was, as Mike was saying, it was the last problematic IP for the company that cannot wait to rainbow and whitewash their questionable past decisions. Now, I understand why you'd want to retheme a ride that has a problematic connection. Whether the intent, like the intent of A Little Mermaid, was not what it turned out to be. The intent of Song of the South was not quite, as Matthew was saying, what we associate with it. But there is a crow named Jim who is black.
That's Dumbo.
Plain as a nose on your face. Now, I understand Disney theming it to something else. But I said, Mike, why did it have to be one of the only black princesses? And he goes, wow, this is becoming an episode. I said, no. Hear me on this. I said, hold on. Why did you have to theme it to any race? So just like I'm going to pick a black woman as my vice president, I don't care who he picks. In fact, I voted for them. And it wouldn't matter if she was black. It doesn't matter to me. It is so much of a non-issue to your function as a member of a society or as a member of a community or a family, the color of your damn skin or the plumbing downstairs. It literally doesn't matter. There are some health and or social concerns that become a whole nother kettle of fish if we're to speak about them, but we're not. My issue with Tiana's Bayou Adventure has nothing to do with that it was rethemed. It's you could have made it about animals.
Well,
you could have made it about anything.
I've given it a little more thought, and I have a little more of an additional answer, but I will. So let me start with that, and then I will get into my original answer. So I actually think, too, that if anything, it's lazy because you don't have much work to do on it because it's like, okay, this is all very clearly based on southern geography, right?
If you're going to rebuild the water ride, why wouldn't you use the story about the bayou?
Yeah, exactly.
It literally is a water ride.
Right.
They couldn't just do anything with it. They had to do a water-based thing.
I like how we're acting like Disney does not literally have
Mermaid
money as deep as the Mariana Trench.
But you want a water ride, but you need a water ride in your park because when you're hot as shit, you go on the water ride. So there's no reason for it not to be a water. I think what's interesting is you're looking through the lens of why did they get rid of a ride that no one under the age of 40 knows anything about? It must be because it was problematic, not because nobody under the age of 40 knows anything about it. Why did they do the black character? Well, no. Why did they do the character whose story takes place in the bayou? It's not about her. It's about the story, the movie, and it's the bayou. So they modernized it to a modern movie that takes place in the right environment.
That's a fair argument, Matthew. But my argument had been the day that we started to have this conversation, and I kept telling Alex, "Save it for the pod. Save it for the pod." We're not attacking you, Alex. You look
I am.
You look defeated, but this is you. You have presented your opinions very well today. You've come prepared, and I don't think you seem I'm not trying to make you seem like a piece of shit.
No, you're not. My frustration is that from when we talked till now, I'm still processing all of this on my own.
Yeah.
So that's where the frustration's coming
Okay.
from. It's not y'all's conversation. It's that
Okay.
I'm
I
still
just don't want.
figuring
I don't
this
want to make you
shit
feel
out.
bad. Like
No,
I think this is a
fuck
good.
that.
This is good for us to like hash out, like to because I think it's a good big stuff to talk about. That's why.
Yeah.
But I don't want to make you feel bad.
No.
So-
Because the pandering thing is the other half of our theme, and I don't want to leave that behind.
Right. So let me get into that part because you had said like, oh, we're gonna keep it black, or I forget how you had said it. My thought was, well, it's the only like Song of the South or Splash Mountain was a problematic black themed ride.
Correct.
And so you take that away, and if you don't replace it with something black, you take away the only black themed thing at Disney.
That is true.
And I think that becomes its own problem. So, like, if you had gone with like Elsa's white supremacy snowfall ride, then that becomes its own problem. Whereas
I mean,
Tiana,
Elsa has a ride in Norway and Epcot, but
but she
that's
didn't
another
at the
thing.
time.
How many things don't have a ride?
Right, but
A lot.
but I just used Elsa because she is like an Aryan princess,
as white can be. Yes,
but Tiana, I think. I kind of think, and I could be wrong about this. I think that the reason why Tiana isn't popular, I think the reason why the Princess and the Frog movie didn't do as well, and this could go deep into like marketing budgets and everything else, could be because she's the only black princess.
I seriously can believe that's possible because other ethnic characters, in other words, not just white or very white adjacent, Mulan.
Mulan's an interesting pick for two reasons. So first of all, I don't know that in 1998 when Mulan came out, American cinema companies or movie companies were as obsessed with the Chinese market as we are now.
True.
And I think Princess and the Frog's like 2009-ish, right? So we were getting obsessed. Now, Mulan you can sell in China, I'm sure, right? Because it's
sure.
anti-Mongolian, it's not anti-Chinese.
It's based on
true.
Right.
It's based on their myths,
So it's
legends,
that's marketable there. So that's a non-white character that is very marketable in China.
There anyway. I bet there's a special edit.
Very likely,
yeah. But like we have there, we've heard it with when it comes to Disney Star Wars, as far as like they reduced Finn on posters to sell to China, and they reduced black characters screen time sometimes, and they've censored things for the Chinese market. And I wonder if again you're talking about a time where a lot of how we rate things as far as box office, like how we rank the box office earnings is especially on that level is like, oh yeah, the Chinese market loved Frozen or whatever, so we made $4 billion on it, and for whatever reason they couldn't get as into this specific like Louisiana story with a black character.
It's one of the very few American-centric stories.
That's a good point too. Like it's so
very
specific,
very true
in so many ways, and all of those things make it great for the Disney World ride, but make it a bad example of like global commerce and box office.
Okay, fair.
And if you're going to talk commerce, remember Disney's number one priority is money. And if they're like, we need to sell Prince of the Frog stuff. We have all this stuff. We have this.
I brought that up.
If we make a ride about it, we can sell property. Regardless of race or
I brought that up to
Mike. We can more stuff to sell. There's a Moana, Journey to Water. We sell water stuff there. That's in Epcot. Magic Kingdom needs a water thing, and we can sell because when they weren't selling any toys from the previous ride. I mean, true. You didn't buy a Brer Rabbit for your kid to take home.
You didn't buy your Uncle Remus stuffy.
So that is a piece that I said to Mike as well. I said, and don't think that Disney wanting to cash in on being ethnically diverse isn't by mistake. I do not think that you seeing the chance to market, as Ricochet Rita in the chat is saying, The Princess and the Frog may not have done well commercially, but I see more shirts with Tiana on them than I do Mulan. And it also might be she also said, and this might be a naive take, but replacing the ride with Tiana gives little black girls a ride where they can see themselves represented in a positive light. I agree with that entirely. I have zero concern with the representation. And this is what I said to Mike. I said, don't think House of Mouse is stupid and they're not like, ooh, wait, we have an entire young black family untouched demo or target audience that we can squeeze just like we do all the white folks. Perfect. I don't think they're that nefarious, but I'm not going to say that there isn't a chance they're that nefarious. I am unfortunately, one of the most privileged possible combinations of human that I could be. I am a white, heterosexual, upper middle class dude.
Who knows
me? It doesn't get any more privileged than this, and I'm aware of that. However, I would, as a possible, I know it's weird we say it this way, minority class or community, the last thing I think I'd give two redheaded shits about is that there's a log flume with someone with my color skin in it. Oh boy. Like, I don't care. That does not make me feel represented because I know what it used to be and you changed it. You could have left it or themed it to a freaking jungle and I wouldn't have two cares either. It's the same kind of thing as that person who's in the Pride community or the person who's in the LGBTQ community. Why the hell can't I wear my Pride pin? This is the community that I'm either an ally of or a member of, but my employer says, oh, no. Oh, but look, we changed the problematic blackface ride.
Like, let me ask you this. Let's. But
also, they may have just changed the ride that nobody bought product from because nobody cares about it.
You're going to continue to say what you're saying, Matthew, makes sense for this example.
I don't know the reason they did it, and unless they made it right. So to make value judgments based on maybe they made it for this reason, and that makes me feel away is weird because we don't know if they did it for that reason.
Yes, I want to talk
about representation for a second, though.
Conservative think tanks loved that's the reason that they changed it, and that's the weird conservative shit crawling into my brain and saying that's why it was changed.
They changed a story about a black man telling kids stories about characters that are allegorical for black heroes.
Yes,
into a story about black characters. Like there was no, like you say, like it was black for black. It wasn't. Here's a story about we went and took the white Captain America ride and changed it to the Sam Wilson ride. Like they didn't take away something and give it back a different. They just updated to a different story from the same general region and class.
I want to throw a hypothetical out there that I think kind of appeals to Alex's specific. Minority status, as he just referred to it, and I'm not trying to be like this is going to sound sarcastic, but I'm not trying to be sarcastic.
It comes naturally,
and it's slightly different because it is a different thing than it's different. But like and you're not big into like comic books, so like I'm going to run out of some like good. So just hypothetically, there's a character.
Had the good one talking about Bill.
Talking about what?
Bill Burr.
Bill Burr was a comic book?
Yeah, we'll get into that in a minute. We'll get into that in a minute because that's a great
example that I can align with.
Okay, but like, so for example, you said the thing about like you don't care about representation when you know it was just taken from this other thing and made into this. And I wonder, would it bother you as somebody who is on the spectrum if a character there was signs always that they may have been on the spectrum, but it was never acknowledged. It was never explicitly written that way. And like lots of times people talk about Big Bang Theory and there's been comments that Sheldon was never meant to be that, or would that bother you?
He used to specifically say, my mom had me tested, like saying he doesn't have any known issues because he was tested as a kid.
Right. But would that bother you because there's lots of characters in fiction, I think you could make the argument for Sherlock Holmes. Like there's lots of characters you could make the argument for if they came out in and I'm not saying like a reimagining of Sherlock Holmes, like, where they, House, I'm not talking about like that far of that loose of a thing, but you make Sherlock Holmes and it's named that and he's played specifically as somebody on the spectrum, or you
mean it's made like overt?
Yes, but it's because it's made in a way that you're like, okay, all of his, it's not inconsistent with what we've seen in the past, but they, like, let's say it's done
it's done in a way as validation,
it's done modern day, and they're like, oh yeah, like there's some acknowledgement of the fact that Sherlock is on the spectrum, or Sherlock is autistic, or has autism, or whatever level. But it's 100% consistent with
he's
the character.
He's a high functioning sociopath.
Huh?
So
he's a high functioning sociopath.
Sure, okay, but I'm not. Yeah, but
that's how he describes himself repeatedly.
Sure, but there's also a lot of consistency, I think, when you look at his character with spectrum, with being on the spectrum.
So your question is,
a like a sociopath has a much worse connotation.
I know. I'm just saying that's how he describes himself routinely. Until the last episode where he shoots somebody, well, not last one of the seasons where he shoots somebody in the face, and he goes, "Told you, I'm a high functioning sociopath."
Yeah.
So you're asking, do I take issue? Do I take issue if Sherlock was portrayed by an actor or an animated series as what?
No, I'm saying, okay, if Sherlock was portrayed as being on the spectrum to whatever level, outright, was played that way outright. And would you, and not that you would necessarily feel great about representation, because I don't think that that's a thing that you are looking for. But again, that's a white privilege thing, right? That we don't have to look for. So but would it feel cheap to you if it was done that way with a character who you're like, oh, but if you read between the lines, it might have been there the whole time? Would that bother you?
Yes. The same way, and hear me on this, the same way that video games and entertainment has started to work in more overt physical handicaps and disabilities. I have never in my life seen a child in a wheelchair on a children's animated show and not thought, I mean, I know why they're there, but does the kid in the wheelchair really feel better that there's a kid in a wheelchair on that screen?
100,000%. 100%.
I also have never seen...
Audience, you need to understand then, I have near zero empathy. It's just a function of the way I operate. My empathy is one of the most broken things about me.
Yeah.
I do not care. So, for example, I like that it's there. I like the intention of it. But if I was a kid in a wheelchair, I'm going to think, great, now more people are going to look at me in the wheelchair and try to do nice things for me.
So it's
and
not
try to
even
say,
a matter
it's so
of,
cool that you were on Sesame Street. I'm like, stop. I am in a
it's
wheelchair.
not
I
even a
didn't pick
matter
this.
of feeling. It's not even just a matter of feeling. And I've been quietly typing because I can type quietly, looking for a study, this old study, and I don't know how to find it. There was studies that when I was an education major, we learned about where they did studies and said, okay, the generic instruction manual and word problems that are given to things are white man instructions. Like that's like the illustrations are white men. It's always it's always done men. And they did studies where they show that people of different races and of different gender, at that time gender was just female that they were worrying about. But for when we went with women, like using she instead of he throughout things, having illustrations of brown or black skinned people in it, did not affect the learning curve of white men. Like white men didn't notice that it changed.
No.
But it did improve the learning curve of the people whose gender it was and the people of the races that were being shown, when they can relate to it better. And that wasn't, I like seeing this. It was, they learned the task better and were able to do the problems more effectively when it wasn't like they're so used to being othered all the time. Like everything is not me. Like just the simple assumption that you're like, look, they put a person in a handicap on this because your assumption is this is for white men or this is for white children or whatever it is. And when there's something that's not white, they made a change. Why did they put a not white in this? Is it because they were the only actor in the world? Or did they say, I want a black kid? You don't say, why didn't they put 2 white people in this? Like you never like watched Friends and said, well, why is this about 6 white people? Right? And then the one episode, the 3 episodes we ever have a black person in, you're like, oh, look, they put a black person. I wonder if they did that on purpose. But you never said, why were the other 4,372 people white? Like also, you just accept that as that's the normal. and anything else. Like, why you never look and say, hey, how come none of the kids on Sesame Street were handicapped in the 70s and 80s? Why were every single one of them in perfect health? There's, they had Latino kids because they were trying to do bilingual, and they had African American kids because it was about inner city. But since, like, and I actually know one of the first kids with autism who were guest spot on Sesame Street was a friend of mine's son who did this amazing video about when he was in second grade of what it's like to be a second grader with autism, and my friends don't understand about me, and it was how to relate to me because I take things literally and I don't understand when you make a joke, and it was all these things, and it went so mega viral, it had millions of hits. Like, his teacher said to his mom, he had it on YouTube private for the class to see, and they were like, you should make that public, and it got millions of views like in weeks, and he was on the Good Morning America show and Today Show, all those shows, and then Sesame Street reached out to him to be on a world like Autism Awareness Month or something, to be on Sesame Street. And then they introduced autistic characters like later in the show, but he was a guest star on the first episode that did it.
So
he's like a high school graduate now.
I want to bring up two side things real quick before Alex starts. Hold on. This is in regards to what Matthew said.
Okay.
So Friends. Now I watched Friends when it was airing. I don't remember much of it. I haven't watched much of it since then. But the one black person I remember, who I think is who you're referring to, was Aisha Taylor.
Aisha Taylor, yeah.
Okay. Aisha was in it, and there was another girl they both dated, like the same way, the same role as Aisha.
This is a problem that I think happens sometimes, which is it's okay to have diversity if they're hot. And that, like, we don't have normal. I mean,
but in Friends, nobody was ever on Friends that wasn't hot.
Fair.
I mean, that's across the board. Okay. Friends were hot. Even the parents were hot. Like, even their parents, except for Joey's parents, because the joke was they were old Italians. Morgan Fairchild was Chandler's father.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, Marlo Thomas was not exactly.
Marlo Thomas was Rachel's mom. And she's still, I mean, so the hot is part of it. But to your point, I mean, that's another representation. Why is everybody? Unless you're a comedian or a comical character, everyone on TV and movies are hot. Like, the average person is hot unless their appearance is part of the gag.
Yeah.
Your Matthew, your statement of, like, yes, of course, the person with said appearance is pleased with their physical or
it's not
visual
just pleased.
representation.
They actually learn better.
Right. And I was, the learn part too.
Take more in.
Yes. So, and then you framing that as you're seeing this as a white heterosexual male. Like, why did they put the not white heterosexual male person here? That made my chest feel gross when you said that, because I understand how it appears now, right? And the reason that I don't like and the reason pander is one of my biggest fears when I'm trying to show empathy to others is because I sure as hell don't want any shown to me. I absolutely do not want anybody doing extra different or kind things for me because I have any kind of other than normal functionality, life, age, body weight, whatever. Like, I want to do all those things for other people. I don't want a damn one of them done.
Yeah, but I think it's not just a matter of doing it for me as much as it's they've been doing it against me all this time.
Yes.
Ignoring that I exist all this time.
Yes.
Ignoring that this kind of person exists forever. Oh, they stopped ignoring it. And the only way to stop ignoring it is to actively do it. I mean, the path to real equity and real equality is you have to say to yourself, you need a DEI program. You need to intentionally do it until it becomes second nature not to intentionally do it.
It's the, like, an object in motion stays in motion theory culturally, essentially. Like, we will keep moving down white guy lane unless somebody pushes us into black. And
you can see it with black people. Like, if you look at comedies in the 70s, start introducing the black friend. And people were probably, look, they have to have a black friend because, civil rights. Yeah. And now a mixed black and
Everybody,
white cast,
I remember this
you
as a
don't
kid.
notice it anymore because that has become so ingrained. It's not just a black friend now. Yeah, there's black characters on the show. Why would I care? But now there's Latino, and you're like, well, that's because Latinos are big now. Now there's an Indian guy. All of a sudden, there's 3 Indian comedians in America. Why the hell do we need 3 Indian comedians? There's 3 guys.
Yeah. Well, they're funny.
Everyone thinks is one.
See, well, that's another. That's okay, Alex.
You need
that's
an Indian guy in a show. You hire one of the 3 Indian actors who show. Even though I'm sure there's Bollywood, so there's plenty more Indian actors, but that's 3 who get jobs until it becomes second nature, and then you won't notice it like we do with Chinese or Japanese. You don't notice as much because we've had more time, forcing them in at first. And
Alex, but what you just said is, and I don't want to say this in a negative way. I think that this could be a part of your particular handicap and how you look at the world. That is, like there's always the good faith, bad faith versions of argument. You're on the good faith version of this argument. And you're like, but they're talented and funny. Why wouldn't I want to see all the Indian comedians if they're funny? And that is the good faith version of that argument, as opposed to, I can't think of a good bad faith argument for that. Or like, do we need this many Indians? Like, or whatever. Like you're coming at it from your thought process, I think, is genuine and well intentioned. That's why I said I don't want to even though we were jokingly going to vilify you. I don't see anything you've said as being bad. I just don't agree with the conclusion you're coming to based on those facts. But I'm also seeing it without the I also am reminding myself constantly that while I will watch any comedian that I think is funny regardless, not everyone will do that. Or I don't remember when they would say back in the 70s, obviously, that, why do they need a black character? But I do remember in the late 90s when they're like, all of a sudden everybody knows a gay person.
I mean, the token, there's a word for it, right? Having a token on the show was originally a token black person.
Yeah. And I do think that there is a representation has the other side of it too, which is it's not just so that a gay person can see themselves represented or a black person can see themselves represented or vice versa. It's also so that the world should see it. It's so that we can see, because now the first stage of that sometimes is resistance, right? And then eventually, there's a bit in, and this is the worst example that I can think of, but there's a bit in the movie, Dead Man Walking, where he is asked if he dislikes Martin Luther King, and he goes no, and he uses the N-word a bunch, and he goes, because he's not lazy, he's not all the things I think.
He doesn't fit into my stereotypes,
and he doesn't fit in, and it's okay, so you have one example because that's all you've been exposed to. But being exposed to, we think, I really think that even though Will and Grace probably had its problems, and especially when you're looking at it 30 years later, but Will and Grace probably endeared a lot of people to be like, oh, these are normal guys. These are just guys living their lives.
Part of the reason I never had issues with gay people was because of my formative young years. Soap was my favorite TV show, and Billy Crystal played a gay character.
Yeah,
and he was just in a loving family that nobody, they all defended him
right.
in the few episodes where he faced negativity about it, and it was so I was raised my favorite character on the show happened to be the gay character, because he's Billy Crystal and he was such a good comedian. He just won me over. And so, but I think, a lot of times when you say to people, especially, to white people, that we live in a racist society and you're all racist to some extent, people bristle at that and say, I'm not. And I think part of where I am is your expectation is that our expectation is that white is normal and something else is different. If you say, picture a room full of the CEO. Picture the CEO, the board of directors of Disney having an argument right now, and you probably picture a bunch of white guys in suits as your first thing you picture. You don't picture 2 Indians, 1 Chinese, 1 Russian guy, 3 women. You picture a bunch of white guys in suits because that's what we've been trained by.
Look
our society.
At every CEO.
That's what we've been trained. But it's not though.
They've even shown that if you read a book,
because that's your expectation. But I worked in multiple companies where the CEO was a woman.
Yeah.
And but you're trained to think man. And that's where we all have a racism in us that we have to stop and intentionally outdo, because we've been taught to picture things a certain way our whole lives and notice when it's not that way.
And they've even shown that the way we read books, for example, is And that it doesn't just affect white guys reading a book and going, okay, well, they didn't describe this person as anything but white, so they must be white. Apparently, that has become an issue in Black culture, and to the point, Zadie Smith, who is a writer, a novelist, and I can't remember which book. I apologize. I think it's Teeth, but I could be wrong. She wrote a book where the only characters who are described by their physical features are the white people, and that the default is Black people. And it was to show like, oh, this is jarring because we're so used to it. Even Black people are used to white being the default in you know.
Well, there was a thing when the Hunger
and
Games came out and Rue was played by a light-skinned Black girl, and people were freaking out. And then they started posting the paragraph in the book where they described her as a light-skinned Black girl. And when people it was one line in the book, so people read past that, and in their head they pictured a white girl because that's what you picture. You picture yourself as the character.
Wait, okay, so I do want to talk, Alex, because I know. I mean, I actually think we could go for a little bit longer than usual.
Yeah, we've gone
on
a
this
long
topic.
time already. We've already gone longer, right? Full hour.
But Alex, I do want to mention.
But it's all being edited out except for the patrons at this point.
Yeah.
That's
I forgot to mention at the beginning. If you haven't already, like and subscribe. We will come back to that at the end. But Alex mentioned this, and we had part of our conversation 2 weeks ago, or whatever it was. And this is an interesting part where I think Alex at the time even acknowledged what I was saying, and so we started talking about Jar Jar Binks, because I am a Phantom Menace.
Jar Jar Binks,
huh?
Misa loved Jar Jar Binks.
I don't. I've never had the problem with Jar Jar that the average Star Wars fan has had.
I mean, I was a full adult when I watched it, and I just thought, wow, what amazing CGI. You can't tell it all. Never for like that. But my dad and I walked out of the theater going, that's so amazing that not for a second do you not think he's real. The idea that the character was could be offensive didn't even occur to us. Even the Arab/Jewish, the Semitic character, we didn't think that much of. Of course, we also grew up in a time when stereotypes were okay.
Have you seen that comedian who goes, he's a Jewish guy, and he goes, eventually we have to stop assuming that every ugly character on film is supposed to be us, because eventually it's just they're like the guy from Star Wars, and he's like, at least he's got a yarmulke on, but like the rest of them But no, Alex wasn't saying that he was offended, that he thought the guy was offensive. Alex, I'm not going to put words in your mouth. Why don't you explain your initial problem?
Okay, so Jar Jar Binks, I think, is an absolute triumph, as Matthew just said, of Industrial Light and Magic's ability way back then to digitize a character and do motion capture and compositing into digital film. It's fantastic. It's the goddamn accent.
Yeah.
And then Mike said, well,
explain why the accent.
Okay, the accent, because the accent is genuinely annoying to me.
Sure, and that is an argument that I'm fine with.
And I think that's intentional because he's supposed to be an annoying character.
He's supposed to be a heel, and sort of like what was the detective from Get Smart?
Don Adams as Get Smart.
Yeah,
86.
but he was like something smart, whatever his name was. Or
Maxwell
Officer
Smart.
Maxwell Smart.
Maxwell Smart.
I got the reference.
Agent 86.
So he's supposed to be very Maxwell Smart. He's supposed to be the reason that all the good things happen, but he wouldn't know if it fell on his face, kind of like Mr. Magoo, right?
Yeah.
Have you seen the video saying that he's a Sith Lord and everything he does is because he's a Sith Lord hiding it?
Which I think is kind of funny.
And he's doing drunken kung fu moves for the whole thing. Love that.
But the argument as presented to me from Alex was, why is there Jamaican accents or Caribbean or whatever, I forget exactly how you worded it, accents in Star Wars? And my response was, Bill Burr is in Star Wars as Bill Burr with Bill Burr's accent.
The most Boston accent ever.
And that takes me way more out of it than any other accent. And I like the episodes with Bill Burr, and I think Bill Burr is good. But like, if you're going to talk about accents that just absolutely shouldn't exist in Star Wars, I think we start with Bill Burr's accent, because like, why is there a Boston accent in space? And again, don't have a problem with Bill Burr being in it. I actually think his episodes are great, and his character is less annoying and is more likable in a lot of ways, so we ignore it, right? But like when he's like the emperor, the empire, like like that's ridiculous.
Stormtrooper.
As opposed to like we have lots of the bad guys are British, the good guys are American typically, and in Star Wars, and we have lots of there's the again, this is considered offensive by Asian people, but there's all the Asian accents of the
Trade Commission,
Trade Federation,
the Trade Federation, yeah.
And then
because it was definitely a feeling like this is Japanese businessmen being harsh businessmen.
Yeah,
kind of thing.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that realistically, because I think George Lucas is like is really bad at doing the right thing, but he is typically trying to do the right thing. I think he was probably trying to say like, well, my society.
He's a really bad director is the problem.
True. It's weird that Alex just
I know that's your side,
a George Lucas
mine.
movie for our next Cinnamon episode.
That is
True. Good writer, bad director.
But George Lucas, I think, was trying to say like, because the original trilogy had limitations in a lot of ways, budgetarily, I'm sure, and like there aren't that many societies that we see. There's characters, but there's not societies. And he expands in the prequels. We see societies in a way that we don't in the original. And I think that one way of expressing that was let's get societies in the real world and have corollaries so that we can have the Trade Federation and we can have, and we start doing that. And, there's a lot of that in especially in the first movie. And then, we do see that throughout the series, the prequels of like, it's vastly bigger in scale of, in that way. And I think that that's what was going on there. And sure, and we can argue about the quality of the execution, but I think that's what the intention is.
I mean, it's the same problem that Lord of the Rings has. They make each culture so two-dimensional, and then you can relate it to an Earth culture, and it becomes offensive. And that wasn't the intent. But it may have been the intent in a little bit to take a shortcut and say, well, Japanese are known as harsh businessmen. Let's make these guys kind of based on Japanese. People do that. Klingons are based on Russia, right? It's this imperialistic.
True.
It's easy to do.
Yeah.
So, but now, Mike, behind the scenes stuff better than I do in movies. But I was always under the impression that Ahmed Best, who was hired because he had been in Rent and he was the physicality, he was a dancer, and he could do the moves, that he developed the voice of Jar Jar Binks. Because as a black guy, he was like, I want to do a character voice. The same way I always fall into an old Jew. Yeah. He went into like a Caribbean accent because that's the accent he did well.
The accent of his family, of his.
Like it wasn't Lucas saying, I want you to act like a Caribbean guy. It was him being, well, I'm moving in this way because that's my movement. And that feels like a Caribbean gait to me. And that's where I'm going with it.
I think that's how you get the specifics of that character. But I think that you also see that like, there is it was American and British in the original. And then in the prequels, it is.
American's a good guy, British are bad guys.
Yeah. I mean, other than Vader, who's kind of on the, kind of both. And
except for
who's voiced by a black guy.
The only good British guy.
Oh, yeah. He's Welsh. I know that's part of
That's British. He's not English, but he's British.
Yeah.
So and throughout Mike talking to me about this, he's like, wait, I said, hold on, Mike, you make a good point. The underwater fish people are West Indian or Jamaican. Well, that kind of makes sense. And I said, and Mike said, well, because he was using this as why can't the Little Mermaid be black? I said, it's a fantasy world. I would have issue if Jar Jar Binks got replaced by someone who wasn't the exact same accent, character, and mannerisms. That I'd take issue with, regardless of what it changes to.
Well, I mean, I get that if it's in the same universe. But when you're rebooting it, and this is not part 2, this is not part of the same universe, this is a different version of The Little Mermaid. Just like, well, why isn't Superman wearing the... Yeah, it's a retelling of it, so it's different.
It's like how we can have Hamlet played or Macbeth played by Denzel Washington. It's not saying that.
You don't say, hey, wait a second. How come Robert Pattinson doesn't have Robin? I saw Robin in the previous movie. That was a different version of Batman with a different Robin. That wasn't this movie. It's a different character. It's not just a different actor. It's not James Bond where a different actor is playing the same role. It's a different version. The Little Mermaid is not part 5 of The Little Mermaid, a continuation at the end of the TV series. It's let's redo The Little Mermaid again. It's a completely different movie based on the same source material.
Beauty and the Beast didn't swap a race on anybody.
But then nobody needed to, though.
Belle's white.
But also,
right?
They did though. They put an English woman playing a French character. It wasn't a color race that you could see, but the character's supposed to be French, and they had an English person.
And she was American in the original.
True. So it's the consistency thing. And unfortunately, because I was raised in such a Jews are running the world and they're all conniving and black people are all the worst of the American race. Like all of this that I got filled with is why that I can hear like inklings of these things.
Oh yeah.
And I can immediately start to justify, oh yeah, no, but that is kind of crap. Why would they do such a thing? The Little Mermaid looks like this.
If you don't make the changes, if you don't make the changes, the media will always would still just be white the way it was in the 50s. Because you say, well, we can't change anything. Well, don't make a change. It needs to be the same as it's always been.
And there's the other argument, which I think you made slightly when we were talking on the phone about this, is the like, why not come up with a new? Why does it have to be Ariel? Why can't it be, whatever?
The story of one of her sisters.
Well, yeah. Why can't it be something else? And I think
I have zero concern if that's what it was.
But
it's not the same character.
But here's my problem.
And you made a point like, oh wait,
but I think the visual look of the character is the least important thing of the character.
But I also think that like when you're talking about legacy characters, there, and we talked about this a bit, Alex, when we talked about the movie that we talked about with my mom on Cinnamon,
Deep Throat.
Jesus Christ, Matthew! I should not have mentioned my mom with you on the phone.
The Western.
Yeah, The Harder They Fall.
Harder They Fall.
Oh, Debbie Does Dallas.
The Harder They Fall is a movie. It's a cowboy Western movie with an almost entirely black cast. And it's a good movie. And one of the things that they are very clearly doing is all the two main characters, or three main characters at least, are based on real outlaws.
Mm-hmm.
And we talked about like, well, Jesse James was a real person, but Jesse James has also become a myth. And they've created
a legend. Thank you very much.
Legend. And that movie was doing kind of the same thing, but you have to be kind of careful with how you pick what you can do that with, because you can't really do that with Harriet Tubman. You can't do that. And I think
you say if the ethnicity or the gender or the nationality of a character is core to what's important about their story, you can't change it.
Sure.
If it's not core to the story, then
why can't you?
Changeable.
Yeah.
Right. So what I'm getting to though is like that was what they were doing in that, was saying we're making our own myth, but that is really, or our own legends of these big real things. We have so much of legend and mythology and just cultural touchstones in society that you can't rewrite from scratch everything. You can't start anew on it. You can't just come up with a new character and have it have the weight of a James Bond or have it have the weight of a Hamlet. Those are things that, and that's why, like, again, there's no reason why James Bond has to be a white guy. I would make the argument he should be a guy. But like, there's no reason why he can't be, and I could be swayed. But
it depends on the time period. Like he has to be someone who was a commander in the Navy. There are women commanders in the British Navy now.
Yeah.
Then it's easier to make that thing.
Well,
than
I
it would
meant
have
more
been in the
because of the
60s where she
womanizer,
couldn't have that background.
Okay, yeah.
But like, I think that like there is this, like, when you talk about these legacy characters, and it's nice, and I hope that we do see more brand new characters for people that aren't straight white guys or straight white women. I hope there are more of those characters that come along. But in the meantime, we also have to deal with the fact that there is a level of legacy. And remaking Princess and the Frog, for example, as a live action movie, well, that movie didn't do well in the first place, and I wonder why. But like, I genuinely wonder why. I don't know if that's part of it, but I imagine that it could be that they were like, well, do we have less faith in it because it's a black character, so we're going to put less marketing into it? There's all kinds of ways that
they maybe
could
think
play.
That all races go see movies starring white characters the same way we all read problems and our experience. We experience white culture all the time. They don't think about it. You don't have a choice. Where people can go, oh, that one's for black people. I'm not going to go see it.
Right. So but by doing that, you've made a
and if you only say like only a third of people will have that attitude, that is make or break a movie, right? A third of the movie going public don't even give it a chance.
Right. And having a good, and I haven't really seen Princess and the Frog to know whether or not it's good.
It is.
But I've heard
good music. It's
almost
well
everyone
voice
has
acted.
said it's great.
Yeah.
But it didn't do very well.
Interspecies relationships, so I have a moral obligation.
They're both frogs.
I am only into interspecies.
I didn't know that. Nobody told me. The commercial doesn't say they're both frogs. Was like Shrek?
So anyway, but like the point being, like, so
Shrek's
when
closer.
she didn't become a legacy character. Tiana didn't become a legacy character the way Ariel and Belle and Simba. I mean, Simba's like obviously
it's a cat,
cat, but like
they're
these
brother
are all
and sister, Simba and Nala.
Anyway, but the point being, like, so you eventually you have to kind of say if we want to have representation, we also have to kind of why does this character have to be what they have always been, and if that is only like a matter of because they've always been it, then that isn't personally for me.
Like to me, that's not a good enough reason either. Like I am at absolute odds with the lines I'm drawing here because I am the first person to want things to change and evolve because otherwise you're not only conservative, but also nothing gets better with time. So I want all these changes, but it doesn't have to be that super obvious elephant in the room change.
Well, I think part of it is what makes it personal is like to you, the look of Ariel was a key part of that movie for you. Like the way that the cartoon character looks is huge for you. To me, I know she's a redhead, but I can't picture her off the top of my head, so I don't care who plays her because it's not the look of her was not important to me. Like I know and I'm not saying that's a racial thing. I'm saying like in a different movie, there might be one where I'm like, no, the fact that Stilgar was Arab is so important to me in the books, and why they never put an Arab person play. Like I think pisses me off in the Dune movies is the Padishah Emperor is supposed to look 35. It clearly says in the book because he uses spice, he looks 35 even though he's 75.
Yeah, and
both movies use an old person to play him. That pisses me off to no end because it's essential to the character and everyone ignores it.
I think, Matthew, to your point about Ariel, for example. So for me, but Ariel and Mary Jane Watson were very big parts of, I think, what inspired me to. It was, and to some extent still am, very attracted to redheaded women. And I think that they probably, those Little Mermaid's the first movie I ever saw in theaters. I was a big Spider-Man kid. So like, these are characters that I'm like, oh, they are very, they were that prepubescent crush thing for me. Now, when I look at Halle Bailey, I am almost old enough to be her dad. So I don't see her as like, I don't look at her and go, oh, she's so hot. So like, that was the only thing missing from me. But like for me, I don't think if you'd cast a redhead that was age appropriate,
you want a 40-year-old playing the role so you could be attracted to her.
I was going to say, if you'd cast a redhead that had been like the age that Ariel's supposed to be in live action, I think I'd have been like, oh, that
would be creepy.
I would have just been like, this is a fun kids movie, and I would not have had the same childhood crush mentality that I have.
Okay, I know that we're running out of time because we're way over our normal episode length. But since you brought up Mary Jane Watson. Everyone on the internet is saying that Sadie Sink, if you don't know the name, the redhead from Stranger Things, redhead girl from Stranger Things, she's supposed to be in the new Spider-Man movie, or she is in the new Spider-Man movie, and people don't know who she is. And people are saying, oh, it's going to be Jean Grey. It's going to be Jean Grey, and she's going to be, tying into the X universe. And I'm like, okay, maybe, but why the fuck can't she be Mary Jane Watson? It's 4 years after the last movie. Like his friends are graduating college or like the last year of college, right? At MIT, and they were just getting in last time. So why can't he not be dating the girl he dated in high school and move on from the MJ that he knew to what a coincidence? My new girlfriend's name is MJ, Mary fucking Jane Watson. Thank you very much. I want Mary Jane Watson. You hit the fucking jackpot, Tiger.
So
that's all I got to say about recasting.
You want to go back to a white redheaded vert.
You want to go back to a white character?
Right name. I don't care who they hired, but if they did hire a redhead, it might as well be the actual character, Mary Jane Watson.
I've heard a lot of speculation that it's Jean Grey and Scott's daughter from the future, which I don't remember the character's
Madeline
name.
Pryor, I think.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm not a huge X fan, but I think it's Madeline Pryor.
So,
actually, there's been at least 3 or 4 different timelines. So I think one of them was Madeline Bryan. I'm sure is Cherry Butt still in the chat? She's probably typing who it is, and when we catch up to the lag,
she
knows more
commented in a few minutes, so I don't know. But I think that I forget where we were at the end of.
We were saying it's been an hour and a half. That the world is racist. We're trying to fight it and do better, and that's our goal.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to learn how not to
I
be
do remember.
one.
I had one thought. Alex.
We all picture the white boardroom, we all have to
She
overcome
says she
that.
loves Sadie Sink. I think casting her as Mary Jane is a waste of her talent. And then Mr. Nimrod says Rachel Summers. Okay. So what I wanted to say, Alex, is you keep talking about, and you mentioned this in the chat with Ricochet Rita, is that you think that some of this is like that, like subconscious holdover from being raised conservative. I have that as well.
Like I absolutely, that's how I feel, because I don't align with the statement, but I spend time trying to justify the statement with other framing.
No.
Even if I'm right with my framing, it's a bad take, dude. And like, here I am defending it,
No, I have that feeling as well on certain things like that. Like, oh, this is a weird thing that I still feel, even though I don't intellectually agree with or whatever. For me, it tends to be more religious. So like, there'll be times when like Logan starts asking about, because Logan's very curious about religion, and he'll say something and I'm like, no. And I would start telling the Catholic version. I'm like, that's what they believe, and I will throw in the they believe, but like there's that like almost defensiveness of like, that is not correct. Like even though I don't believe it, and I think the religion is
it's like my dad's old joke about being a Jewish atheist. There's only one God and we don't believe in him.
Yeah, that's a great joke.
I like that.
There are those things that we have holdovers. There are some that are conservative. The one that I think every once in a while that kicks me in the ass when I think about it is I hear a very intensely ethnic sounding name, and I will say that it only seems to apply to black names, which I think is also its own weird specific racism, where I go, why would you name your kid that if you want them to get a job? I literally think that every once in a while, and then I go, oh, why the fuck did you just think that? Where you don't think that about like other, like if someone has an Indian name, you don't think, oh, they're never going to act.
My wife changed her name on her resume from Madhavi to Maddie because she wasn't getting interviews. And then she got a job.
Yeah.
When she first came to Glaxo, her resume said Maddie, and everyone in her department called her Maddie. And at our, we had a baby shower when she was pregnant with Leah. My department hosted it because I had been there much longer, and her department was very small. So the 5 people from her department came to our baby shower, and they were so embarrassed that their card said, "Dear Matthew and Maddie," and all my departments was Matthew and Madhavi, and everybody in my department were calling her Madhavi, and they were like, is that her full name? Like they didn't even know it was her name, but she did it because she wasn't, she on paper, Madhavi might not even speak English. Who the hell is she? And she had to do it.
See, the only time I've ever had that thought is black names. And I think it's because I was raised hearing a lot of jokes about like, why would you name your kid? Even the thoughts of like examples I'm thinking of right now are probably like going to make me sound like a racist asshole. But like, why would you do that? As opposed to,
let me be that guy this episode.
It's one time that I don't seem like the asshole in this show. But like, I don't think about like, if I hear, we're in an area where I meet a lot of Indian and West Asian, or what, like
East Asian.
India's not East.
South Asian. South Asian.
Well, like, I mean, India, Pakistan, Southeast Asian is China.
Okay,
Japan,
we know a lot of people, and they have names that are, and I get that there's also religious, like one of Logan's best friends is Muslim, and they all have what I think of as kind of typically Muslim sounding names. And I think that is its own thing, but I don't think of that way. But like, I don't think of those, that's not like Bob or Steve, like they're not going to get jobs. I think, oh, that's not a problem. And I will say, like, I don't actively think it. It's more like it catches you, like you hear the name and you go, why? Why would you?
I will also say most Indians that come over on like an H-1 visa pick an American name. And I mean, Asians in general, Chinese people do it too. They pick an American name as their initial name because because rightly they're afraid of the racism about if you can't pronounce my name, why would you want to hire me and be embarrassed that you can't pronounce my name at work?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think I think that it's.
I mean, my friend Rajiv, when he gave me his home email address, it was Bobby and then his last name. And I was like, Bobby. And he goes, when I first came to America, I chose that name. Like Bobby he'd been there for a long time now, so he didn't use Bobby anymore. He used his actual, he went by Rajiv in the office. Yeah. But when he first came over, he used Bobby. Like you pick an American sounding, like the most American sounding names you can.
Yeah. But I just wanted to show you, Alex, that I think that these are natural things to still be in us, but we have to keep challenging them. And you are doing that work, and you made it very clear. And I'm trying to do that work too. But like that's a little more closer to the surface level of that. Like everyone is racist. Like it's bubbled a little higher than maybe the standard saying of that.
But I think and we put so much importance on skin color that it's the one we notice the most. Like I said, we switch from an American actress to a British actress. You don't care. Ulysses, right? Everyone's upset that there's a black character in Ulysses. They don't care that not a single person in the cast is Greek. They don't care about that at all. It's the color that you can see that people care about just because we're trained that that's the important thing rather than all the other issues.
Before we go, one more example. The Odyssey is coming out next month. And the Odyssey is there's been a lot of casting talk about like having a black woman play Helen of Troy and all that. And that's not even what I want to talk about for a minute. What I want to talk about is some people who have been, I'll say a little more intellectually honest, but a little bit less or not, that doesn't make it any better or it makes it less racist. That's what it is. People have been saying like, why does he say dad? Like, why does Tom Holland's character in the trailer say dad instead of father? And like, this is going to be a really weird combination. And it goes back to the translation version that Christopher Nolan is adapting. And that translation, I watched a YouTube video recently about it where a woman was saying she read the translation notes, and the reason why the language is more 20 whatever year it was published than it would be like Shakespearean English is because the Odyssey is 3,000 years old. Both are so far from the mark that it doesn't really matter. And like us,
but it's really weird that we think that it should be translated to sound like Shakespeare. Why? Yeah. You're translating it to English, translate it to American.
Yeah, exactly.
Why wouldn't you?
And that's essentially what she says is like, we have this false sense of
it's
like everyone should, Ian McKellen is what everyone should sound like, or the way we do Gladiator and all those other movies where it's like, if everybody sounds vaguely British, that is what historical should sound like. And she goes, but there's no good reason for
it. That's what historical.
It's the Tiffany problem.
What are you? I'm English. Where the history's from.
It's the Tiffany problem. They say that if you're reading a medieval story and there's a character named Tiffany, you'd be like, why would you name a character Tiffany? Because that was a common name in the Middle Ages. We just think it's an 80s name, so we don't like it. Yeah. I mean, that's always like thinking, like, well, why do they sound this way? Because they're speaking in a foreign language. I mean, with science fiction all the time. To me, what's important is, what was the context? Was it an adult talking to his father formally, where it's a father, I need to speak to you. Joseph calls me father. But when Joseph and I are hanging out, he's like, oh, Dad, that was so funny. Context is important of when he would call me father and when he would call me dad. And I think that is important, like what term was used in the book, whether they're using a formal term or an informal term. But we don't know that unless we're translating the Greek ourselves,
Yeah.
But it should feel right in the moment.
I will say personally, and this is not that this but the way I've always looked at dad and father is, if I'm talking to my dad, I say dad. If I'm talking about your father, I'll say father. Or even if I said like my father is, I'm not going to tell you like, oh, my dad is occasionally I do.
You might.
But more often
how casual your conversation is. It's a matter of casual versus formal.
Yeah.
I mean, and like things change over time, because this is hysterical in my family. So here's a weird thing in my family that was no one has planned, but it happened.
Yeah.
My uncle David, my father's older brother, one of my father's older brothers, called my grandfather Pop. My father used to call him by his name. He used to call him Joseph or Yussel, which is Yiddish for Joseph, all the time. But David always said Pop. When my uncle David died, at some point over the years, my dad switched from calling my father by his first name to calling him Pop. Like he just absorbed the name Pop. And at some point, because I was a Robin Williams fan and I had Reality What a Concept, and he does a Shakespearean scene where he goes, "Father, mother, I call upon thy name." I used to call my mother, father, father, and mother in Shakespearean all the time. But at some point, I switched to calling my father Pop. Like I picked up the Pop name, and a couple of months after my father died, I noticed Joseph had started calling me Pop. Like some Pop has jumped down, but like only from one son at a time to one father at a time in our family.
Nice.
And with that, I think it's time to end this podcast.
I do too. All right.
So I'm going to tell you, if you're watching this on video and you're still with us, why?
Thanks. Why?
But please go ahead and make sure you like the video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't subscribed. Even if you never check the subscription, it helps us. And why wouldn't you want to help us? We're trying to be better. Make comments on our videos. Just go through our videos and say, hey, this one wasn't nearly as offensive. Whatever you want. Just a comment a day keeps the algorithm at bay. So
and I will
that would be
say,
great if you could just do that for me.
A nice comment to Alex to let him know that you don't hate him or think he's a racist.
Or you do.
Great.
Frankly, you know.
Or you do,
One of my favorite comic book creators on YouTube always says, if you like this conversation, like the topic, please comment and tell us how much you like it. And if you don't, lie.
All right. And if you want to support us otherwise, you can go on to patreon.com/talking about the big stuff. There we have 4 options, including a free option, which you should be doing if you're subscribing anyway, right? Because then you're getting alerts. You'll get a little bit heads up on certain things, and hey, that topic sounded interesting. I don't want to wait the 3 days. You could always see that and buy and upgrade for a month or whatever. So $0 is great. It also helps us algorithmically. There's the $1 option, which gets you these episodes early. The $3 version gets you extra stuff. The $10 version gets you all the stuff at the beginning of the show. And on an episode like this, you want to know all the stuff that's going on, right? Because if you think about how horrible the stuff is I left in on this episode,
okay, good point.
The stuff that I cut out when Alex used the N word, when Matthew used the P word, I was surprised. Actually, I said I just picked a random letter. And I'm like, oh, there actually is a P word, but like it's not offensive. But I was just trying to be funny. I should never try. All right, so go to patreon.com/talking about the big stuff. And I am not going to cut off Alex this time when he says something. But before you do, Alex, Matthew, do you have any last thoughts for us?
Gracias por hablar de los temas importantes hoy. ¿Suena esto a quiere congraciarse?
Gracias.
I had one too, but it died. I thank you, Rita, in the chat. It's very brave to do this deconstructing work in such a public way. Thank you. I appreciate that. I believe the only way I'm going to get better is I intentionally make friends and surround myself with people that challenge how I think and what I think. Otherwise, I'm just going to be in a bubble, and I'm going to be the dude that peaked in high school, and we know who they voted for. So, that's not me, and it's never going to be me. Representation matters, and equity and empathy are the way that we're going to grow. Not just me, but all of us together. So please pay attention to how you look at others.